Hello classes, here we go again. We're working on our various watercolor techniques. We've noticed some things have dried and we can see how they actually worked out. So with your graded wash, did you like, what would you do different, and so on. Like I said, with the wet into wet, it dulls down a little bit when it dries, not quite as exciting. But it's a pretty cool technique, and so in every paper actually it can look a little different, and the quality of the paints will cause it to look a little different, but it's a fun technique you play with, and you also just have to let it happen. I put these sticky notes here to remind myself kind of what my plan is, but okay, it's time to get going. Some of these things we're doing a second step. Now the overlapping, oh, also wanted to remind you, I have this information written down here. There's some other techniques we haven't talked about as much. I'm hoping to have some time to talk about them, but I'm going to put this to this side. So first of all, we're getting ready to start for the day, so I'm going to once again get some paint and put it in my different colors, so that they're kind of soft and ready to go when I reach for them in a couple of minutes. So, you know, it just dries again. It's called semi-moist paints. It's never like hard. Actually, if it is, it's usually the low-grade ones for children. Usually they're just a little bit kind of sticky, which means they have this gum thing in them, which keeps them kind of ready to go for you to paint with. Anyway, if you haven't noticed it in your palette, one side of the palette, the one that has the black here at the end, these are your basic colors: red, orange, yellow, and so on. And these are your blended colors here on this side. And then, like I mentioned before, this extra color instead of the white is a mixing red. If you want bright red, you choose this one. If you want a red to change your colors, you choose this one. Okay, so as far as the overlapping transparencies, I just wanted to show you how this works when you have a situation where you have some details and you maybe want to enhance something or show more of something. I just put some greens in here and some yellows, and this kind of infers maybe plants of some type. So what happens is when you go over the top of this with more paint at a later time, here and there. See, I have my green, I have my yellow. Now I have a pretty overlapping color. So you can layer your details over what you've done and get more details. So it looks much more complicated than it actually was when you painted it. This would be a very common thing to do for things like landscapes and other painted things. You multiply your details by this layering. I'm gonna kind of put the different colors in I used last time. I didn't use too much of this one. Okay, that's a little bit dark, so what do I do if I do something I don't like? I just get a paper towel and soak it up. Now, one thing about this overlapping transparencies is you also, you don't want to brush it around too much. You just want to kind of do it and have it sit there. So not too much of moving it around. I'm going to try adding a new color, and we'll see what other kinds of pretty colors we can get. So yours might look a little different, which is fine, but let's try overlapping some orange. See, I get the orange over the green. That's kind of nice. So I'm some of it's bleeding into the other colors, which is fine. So I'm looking for where I have some dry areas of color to overlap in. So your colors you always have to be able to see underneath. So see, orange, here's the blue-green, and then there's a color in between I've created. So just practice. You can let it dry and try it again one more time. So it's not like there's, the art police will say you can only do it once. So overlapping colors is layering of colors, and as it dries, you layer more colors. This is a little bleeding spot. I don't like it. Removing it with a paper towel. And that's the idea, kind of as if you had painted it all. This is often done with techniques involving, like I said, nature and different. If I was doing my hair, I'd probably go in with some layers as opposed to trying to just paint one color, and that would enhance my different things I'm doing. So overlapping major technique. You just plan in advance. You do something, then you go over it and back and forth. So big technique. And the paper was dry, of course. Next one I wanted to show you just to talk about my salt. You know, how did your salt do yesterday? You can see some over here. Let me get it larger right there. These little sparkly things. You can see, and that's what salt does. You have something interesting in your painting, you sprinkle some salt, leave it alone, and then it kind of soaks up. It took mine about half an hour before it really started to work yesterday. Now it's dried overnight. If there's still salt on top, if there is, you probably used too much. You just wipe it off. You don't really want a bunch of salt on your painting, so just get rid of it. And you don't want it to get into other parts of your painting either. So now I have salt on my paper. Okay, I just wanted you to check out the salt. We're not doing anything else to it. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about dry brush. Dry brush is kind of a nice technique. We're over on this paper, back to this paper again. And it's very common, and it's a way of giving textures. Basically, if you've been painting at some time, and your brush starts to run out of paint, and it starts painting all scratchy, that's dry brush, only we're going to do that on purpose. So this gives us really nice textures for like tree bark or something. That's why I kind of put this green brown in here. It doesn't matter what color you do. So I always start with my brush has to be wet to start with. I'm getting rid of extra water. I'm going to dip it. I'm going to just start, I'll start with this violet color. Dip it in the violet, getting rid of some of that, and then I want my brush bristles to be kind of spread out here. And then we're just going to paint with the side of the brush. And see, it's a transparent thing over the top. I'm going to make this larger. And I'm just going over, so my brush is running out of paint and painting kind of scratchy. So we're doing this on purpose, but now I'm going to keep going with it. There's no reason I have to stop. So a wet brush, get rid of the water, dip in the paint, kind of get rid of most of it. So you just hardly have anything on the brush at all. Then you're going to drag that across the top. So I have more of this dry brush. The brush is running out of paint. I can use my brush in different ways. So if I wanted it to look even more like wood grain, I could kind of curl it a little bit. So I'm going to do some of that. And then I'm going to, my brush is actually, I can get it more dry than that, could even scratch it. And if you're, remember that the surface quality of your paper is called tooth. If there's a lot of tooth on your paper, it gets even more, you get an even better response from this dry brush technique. You get some really nice stuff. So gotten rid of the water, put some paint on it, got rid of most of the paint, and then just going to kind of paint with it. It's kind of scratchy. And right now what I'm looking for is maybe some type of a wood technique, like with my different colors. And so this is black right now. So can still layer it. Anyway, so kind of fun, dry brush technique. You can get even drier. Let's get it a little bit drier. So it's even scratchier. I'll go back to some purple. Okay, pretty dry. Gonna finish with some little purple here and there. Anyway, you know, I did a lot of it. You don't have to do that much. As long as I can still see through the paint, I can get a little bit heavy with my paint. But basically, going ahead and painting with your brush, even though it doesn't have much paint on it, and paint's kind of scratchy, and you can get some really nice textures that way. That's a very common technique. I would do that for hair, for bushes, trees. If I'm doing a tree, I'll just show you really quick. If I'm doing something like a tree, just get, not a tree, like the grass, for instance, I just go like this. You see that? And then I just maybe layer a couple different colors. This is how I do something like grass, you know, and then I do it like that so it's layered on top. Oops, this is rough, you couldn't see that. This is what I just did across the bottom here. I was showing you how to put grass in with just a little brush stroke with some dry brush on my brush. Okay, let's move over here, play around with a couple more things. On the tape, so we put the tape on, we let it dry, and now I can carefully peel it off. The idea with the tape too is to not make it so obvious. Artists can be a little snobby, like, oh, I see you use tape. Seriously, they're like that. So you don't want it to be like so obvious. You want it to enhance or make what you're doing better and more successful. You don't necessarily want to say, hey everybody, look over here. Isn't this nice what I do with a piece of tape? So we're disguising it a little bit. What I'm going to do now is I just wanted to show you, this is how well it works. The paper's dry, so it's peeling off very successfully. And then, but I can also layer this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put in a couple strips where I want to keep that white, let's say. I'm just kind of randomly designing this. I don't really know what I'm up to here. And I want to keep some of the white, but I also want to have keep some of the red. I want to have another layer of color in there, and so I can layer this. It's going to look really, really nice. I'll make sure it's dry. I hope I can get it dry by the next video. And then let's go here like this. Okay, so I added some more tape, and now I'm going to layer it. So the tape works just once if you need a horizon line or something. I just wanted you to know you can kind of play with it. It's nice to work with. So I'm going to add some more. I'm not going to get the paper wet because I don't want to make these lines fuzzy. I want to keep this kind of sharp. Went through all that trouble to do that, right? So I might as well leave it nice. So if I use an opposite color like green, I'm just going to get a brown. So maybe I can either go in the orange direction or I could go in the violet direction maybe. I think I'm going to go in the orange direction now. So I'm going to just paint right over the top of it and come up with some color that's maybe even stronger here and there, and then see what it ends up looking like. I'm trying to vary my line. Remember what line weight is? Trying to vary my line weight a little bit so everything doesn't look exactly the same. So this is going to be pretty interesting. There's going to be some white showing, some orange showing, and then some different things. Now I'm going to let that dry again, and I'm doing the overlapping as well. So if you want, go into your tape again, try a second layer, and I think you're really going to enjoy it as a technique. Another one for this video is the markers. Now, what I'm talking about, there's two kinds of markers, basically, that are used with these techniques. The first one would be the Sharpie type experience, which shows permanently at the end. The other one would be a Crayola type experience, which these will dissolve into the paints. So I'm going to kind of show you a before and after with these. First of all, I'm going to draw another line down the middle. I'm not measuring this, I'm just drawing it. So okay, and I'm going to write before. So putting down the markers before you draw and putting down the markers after. And so what I'm going to have to do now is paint a little something here, and then I'm going to draw on top of it later. But right now I'm just going to draw some markers here. So before I draw, let's say I'm going to do a flower. So maybe I'm going to just do a flower, a leaf, something simple, maybe a sun, and kind of do the same thing in both sides. So before I paint, let's say my flower looks like this. And I might even have some nice details. I'm not going to completely draw everything in this drawing because I'm also going to use some colored markers. I'm going to have a leaf here, and I'm even going to stick up another leaf up here. So this is my basic design, and I can have a little bit of detail. Let me see, I think it needs a little bit more, and then I'm going to add some color. Okay, if you have, depending on which colors you do have with you, so I'm going to show you what's going to happen next time if I actually use some water with some of these. So this is just a marker, and then maybe I'll add just a little hint of the green in here. I have some, happen to have these three colors. Some red. And then I'm going to, so this is a before thing. And then I'm going to kind of paint something here. We're going to come back tomorrow and then we'll show you kind of how it works both ways, before and after. So let's, really liking the tape. I'm excited about that one. I think I'm going to get this a little bit wet. And then I'm going to add some, oh, I had orange too. So let's add some orange there. I'm going to go ahead and kind of paint something similar here, like a little bit of orange. It's pretty wet. If it's too wet, soak up some of it. A little bit of orange. I'm going to have, I think it's nice to have a little bit of a thing spreading around. Now if I want more water, I can always add a little more water after I painted. So it's kind of, it's a little wet, it's a little dry. I did that on purpose. I'm gonna add my leaves. It came out kind of interesting. And then what else do I want to add? Go back with a tiny bit more orange right there, and maybe another color green. So I'm going to, let's see, this is going to cross back and forth right there. The color's going to spread, so I'm going to soak up some of that water. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to, next time we come back, we're going to try painting over this, and we're going to try drawing over this. So this just has to dry. Let me talk about just a couple things on this that we haven't talked about yet. Scratching is very traditional. You just cut through the paper. And the paint can settle there and make dark lines, or you can do it to dry painting and reveal some white paper. It's a very fine white lines. Splatter is just like, boom, shake the paint around. Very, very common watercolor technique. We're kind of not set up to do this in your homes, but sure, splash some paint around. I love doing that. You can see I'm doing that accidentally anyway. In fact, you just pretend you did it on purpose when you splatter. It very much belongs in a watercolor painting, maybe not so much in other paintings, but yes, a splatter is considered part of it, and that's just fine. I talked a little bit about resist, and I'm going to talk about some other things. As far as the this one technique here, not brush line, but the graded wash and these different ones. This thing here called streaking with a rag. If you want, while you're painting, I can take my paper towel and push it around and stamp it around and so on, like with the wet and wet, and work in more cloud techniques and stuff. So this can be an eraser. It can also be a tool while you're painting. So this streaking with a rag, it sounds really random. It's something I often do. You see me using my paper towels a lot. Striping brush is a little bit similar to the dry brush. It's a wide, specially shaped brush. And it's basically you just take your brush and then you can, doesn't matter what the brush shape, you spread it between your fingers, and you can use paint lines if there's a reason to have lines, maybe some mechanical thing going on in your drawing. So that's a special brush people do. And then I'll talk about these other ones tomorrow, these other things. So anyway, these are kind of fun. These are a little bit pickier today, and we'll get into some more splashier stuff tomorrow. Okay, we'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.